welcome and introduce a young woman who is a native of Sri Lanka, studied law in Great Britain, is now with one of our sponsors, Northern Trust, and earned her U.S. citizenship in January. Please welcome Samantha Abeysekera to introduce her.
Esteemed friends, esteemed guests, my name is Samantha Abeysekera. I'm Senior Vice President at the Northern Trust Bank, and it's an honor to address you this afternoon and introduce our next speaker. But before I do that, I do want to call out my colleagues at Northern Trust for just a moment. Northern Trust has a long history of supporting the LGBT community and supporting organizations that support equality. For many years, we've had a dedicated LGBT practice that serves the financial needs of the LGBT community nationally. And we have a history, decades long, of being an advocate for diversity, such as giving our staff, our gay and lesbian staff, domestic partner benefits since 1996. And, as in prior years, we are a proud supporter of the Victory Fund. And I'm personally proud to have gone through the training, the Victory campaign training in March, which was just after I became a citizen of this great country. And I did those things because I sincerely believe that the core of our cultural opinion resides in all of our active engagement in citizenship. And our LGBT movement, unlike the other equality movements, race, gender, etc., cuts across every strata of our society, color, age, you name it, and so has the ability to truly bring everybody along. And yes, that does include our transgender brothers and sisters. And it should be that talented individuals, no matter your creed, color, or community, can be elected. And it is therefore my distinct honor to introduce Annise Parker, out official, 3-term elected, and mayor of one of America's most populated cities. Annise has not just been a tour de force in politics, but also in practice, where in Houston she helped launch our LGBT practice. And most recently, Annise worked passionately to bring forth the Equal Rights Ordinance to ensure that Houstonians would be protected from all forms of discrimination. And so, this is why work at the Victory Fund is so important, both in Houston and across our great nation. It is far past time that equality is truly embedded in our country, and that we support and salute those that embody such change. So please put your hands together and welcome to our beautiful city, Houston Mayor Annise Parker.
You've been here a while, I just
that it's good to be back in Chicago. I had the opportunity to come and participate in a fundraiser for your marriage equality initiative, and I'm rooting from afar, and I'm really glad to be back here. And let me just say that I am inspired by the two babies who spoke earlier. I'm old enough I can say that. And I'm inspired by our two new state representatives to be. Although, talking about how tough it is in Michigan, I'm sorry, I'm from Texas. The land of Ted Cruz and Rick Perry. Deb, you said you didn't know any jokes. I have a good one. Rick Perry. And he's running again. I'm now in my 5th year as mayor of Houston. And I know I've been elected 3 times as mayor. We have 2-year terms in Houston. We actually don't like politicians very much in Texas, and so we make them run a lot. And so it's not unique to Houston, but I am proud of the fact that I have now actually been elected 9 times citywide in the city of Houston, each time with support from the Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund. When I was elected for the first time as mayor, it made worldwide news. Houston's a big city. It's the 4th largest city in the United States, just behind some city that will remain nameless. And, although we're growing faster, just saying. But normally, a mayor of Houston doesn't make news coverage around the world, but my election was even covered with a small box on the front page of the Times of India. And it was a lesbian elected mayor of Houston. And the response was somewhere between lesbian or Houston. How did that happen? It happened because of a lot of hard work. It happened because I'm very good at what I do. And it happened because a lot of individuals and organizations came together to help get me across the finish line. And first and foremost among those organizations was the Victory Fund. And as I said, the Victory Fund has been with me in all of those 9 races. And you've heard this from the other candidates. The Victory Fund provides a range of support. But one of the first things it does, for those of you who are financially supporting the Victory Fund, the Victory Fund vets candidates. There are a lot of GLBT candidates out there. Not all of them are viable candidates. And one of the first and hardest things that the Victory Fund does, it trains candidates, but the organization also vets candidates. And so that when you put your money down, you have a really good shot at backing the winner. When you think about the number of people who enter races across the United States and how many don't win, the fact that the Victory Fund has such an amazingly good track record tells you that they do a very good job of helping vet candidates. And then once those candidates are selected, Victory Fund provides the resources, both direct contributions, helping you bundle your donations to candidates, but in addition, independent expenditure campaigns to help races. There's something about getting those weekly missives from the Victory Fund that is absolutely special when you're a candidate. And I know there's a number of candidates in the room. It is a morale booster, it is a spirit lifter to have people from across the country being interested in your race. Whether that check is $25 or $2,500. It matters to a candidate to know that there are people all across America pulling for you. I want to tell you a little bit about what it's like being a candidate. It is a combination blind date, job interview, and meet the in-laws. And it goes on for months and months and months. And then you have cold calling strangers asking for large amounts of money to wrap around that package. And it goes on for months and months and months. And I can't believe that you said you liked raising money. Watch him. It's dangerous. It is a grueling exercise. In the city of Houston, in order to even get on the field, you need about $1 million campaign. To be considered a serious candidate, you need $3 million. My first race for mayor, I had to raise from a standing start $4.5 million. The mayor that preceded me, his first race, he threw in $7 million of his own dollars. Or $3 million of his own dollars that he counted. I think it was more like $7 million, and he raised a total of 10. So these are big money, big league political races. I can remember one of the incidents from that race for mayor. Actually, I'll tell you a story from back when I was just running for city council. I was still in the oil industry. I spent 20 years working in the oil and gas industry before I entered politics. And I took a leave of absence from the company when I had to campaign. And fortunately, I worked for a very sympathetic Republican oil man, Annise Parker, who allowed me to campaign. But I was on my way to work one morning, and I got a call from the campaign. They said, the Baptist Ministers Association is screening candidates today. I said, well, it's not on my schedule. They obviously don't want to see me. They said, no, trust us. Just show up. They won't be willing to tell you that they didn't invite you. Just show up. Invite yourself. Okay, that's that kind of meeting the in-laws feeling. So I said, okay, I went back into, I was actually dressed probably similarly to what I am now, but a little more somber because I was in the oil industry, probably a dark suit. So I went back into the house and I put on my most feminine dress. I put on pantyhose. And I went to the church where there were screening candidates, and I walked in, I signed my name, and I plopped myself down on the pew with the other candidates from the other races that they were screening, and I sat there and I waited. And I don't know what the conversation was inside, but they eventually allowed me to go in and talk to them. And I must have done a really good job, because a couple of days later, I got a call, and Baptist Ministers Association of Greater Houston said that they were going to endorse me for my race. Wait, it gets better. Now, one of my opponents was actually a Baptist minister. And he was a member of the organization, and they said, we're going to endorse both of you. We know he's not viable, and we think you're a viable candidate. We're going to endorse both of you. We need you to show up at the press conference where we announce our endorsed candidates, as we do every year. And this is one of those endorsements where it required a financial contribution from the candidates in order to get the endorsement. I said, okay. And it was $1,000 for the endorsement. So I actually hired a photographer, made sure I was there, showed up on the day of the press conference, and I saw a candidate out in the parking lot having a screaming meltdown. I said, okay, this might not be good. And I went inside, and they grabbed me as I came in the door and said, you know, we've been praying over this a lot, and we have decided that we don't think we can endorse you in this race, that we're just going to do a single endorsement of our colleague, minister. And I said, okay, I understand completely. I understand that you had to struggle with this endorsement. I just want you to know that I came in good faith, and I have this check for you. And as a symbol of my good faith, I want you to keep this check, because I know, as men of God, I can trust you that you will not spend it. But we both know that your candidate will not make it into the runoff. And I believe I will. And if I do, I want the opportunity to sit down with you and convince you that I'm the candidate who deserves your support. And they kept eyeing the check, and they kept it. And then I went inside, and I shook hands with every member of their board, thanked them for their consideration, put a serene expression on my face, watched the press conference, went back and explained to my campaign manager how I had tied up $1,000 that we didn't have in this grand gesture. But in that runoff, they endorsed me. And in that runoff, which was a very tight one for my council seat, I needed every vote that was out there. We have to have candidates who are comfortable in their own skin. We have to have candidates who are tough and tenacious and able. And in order to have candidates who are able to get through that night after night blind date job interview, our candidates need to know that you're there and that you care. I have been out for more than 40 years. I spent a long time as an activist before I entered politics, and I used to talk about how there was no such thing as a gay agenda. Some of you don't remember there's a gay agenda. That used to be what folks would use to raise fears about our community, the gay agenda. Well, I'm here to tell you that I was wrong all those years. There is a gay agenda. The gay agenda is that we want to go to school without being bullied. We want to be able to walk down the streets of our cities without being assaulted. We want to be able to serve our country honorably and with pride. We want to be able to work, to pay taxes, and to support ourselves. And we want the dignity of supporting the people we love and the relationships that sustain us. We want the ability to love and be loved. And in order to achieve that agenda and those rights that should be self-evident, we have to have men and women in the halls of power in this country who can secure those rights for us. And unfortunately, as we sit here today, we have to know that there is a lesbian in Africa recovering from a rape as part of an epidemic of what is known as reparative rape. Wouldn't you know, a violent assault, a violent sexual assault by a man is just what's needed to make sure that she doesn't become a lesbian. As we sit here today, there is a gay man in Iran facing the death penalty for sodomy. As we sit here today, there is a transgender woman in Asia in the hospital recovering from a violent assault on the street. And as we sit here today, there's a young gay man in America contemplating suicide. So while we celebrate our victories and our successes, and they are many, there is so much more work yet to do. The only way we can create the world as we know it should be is to use the tools we have at hand, to take advantage of the fact that we live in the most powerful nation on earth, and to use the levers of power in America to not only change our country, but to move the world. None of us have done all that we could to make a difference. Each of us has an opportunity to change the world. Full speed ahead.